I graduated high school in the summer of 2021. Unlike most of my friends, I chose not to go to college. There were many reasons for this, but really, it all came down to one. Thankfully, I've always known what I've wanted to do: work in film.
Is he okay?
Though, during the period between graduating high school and getting my first job in film, I felt incredibly hopeless and lost. It's not like I could just search film jobs near me and apply. I'm not from LA. I'm from the complete opposite side of the country. So for me, the idea of breaking into the industry with no contacts and no experience felt impossible. During the day, I would drain myself applying to countless semi-related film jobs across the country. And at night, I worked as a waitress and questioned why I hadn't gone to film school. But I knew why I hadn't. I saw my friends online enjoying college and working towards something, which only made me feel, for lack of better words, like a complete loser. In reality, I wasn't a loser at all. I know this now. But the pressure I was putting on myself to achieve everything I wanted in such a short time frame was unrealistic. It was one day when I stumbled upon an email for a working production in a town just 2 hours away from where I lived at my mom's. I emailed this production with my overly eager cover letter and a resume full of personal projects. 2 hours later, I received a call asking me to work as a production assistant the next day on a Fox show. I packed my suitcase and left home for work, thinking I'd be gone for just a couple of days. I ended up leaving for an entire year. It was then that the door welcoming me into the world of film had opened, and a life of stability had closed. During that year, I was overworked and overstressed. I loved work, but I was doing so much of it that I felt incredibly isolated every second I had alone. My friends were having fun in college, and I was working 78-hour weeks, not having a second to reflect on how quickly my life had changed, or how much pressure I was putting on myself. In the summer of 22, I moved cross-country and lived in LA for what meant to be 3 months but ended up being 2. While I didn't find much work out there, for the first time since graduating high school, I was spending the weekends with friends and enjoying my free time. I felt myself relax a bit from the pressure I'd been putting on myself. Despite living in a cramped apartment, I was incredibly grateful for getting myself to this point. Strange circumstances led me to leave LA quite abruptly. For one, I got hit by a car. Yes, a car. I flew back home and immediately off the flight I went to work a 15-hour day. I didn't let myself stop. I felt so much pressure to force myself to thrive in hustle culture, and I was surrounded by others who did the same and who had been for much longer than me. We were all so consumed in work, never saying no to a job, always prioritizing work over time spent with ourselves, with family, with friends. It's as if I were completely on autopilot, and I grew comfortable in that state. So comfortable that whenever I had time off, I felt disconnected from myself. My solution: work more. It was around this time when I got a call to work on an incredible job which would take me out the country. These work trips brought me to beautiful places, and I felt so grateful. Here, I grew more connected towards myself, and I felt proud. At these places, I was able to momentarily unpack my belongings. Each place I visited, no matter how short I was there, I made it mine. It wasn't until I returned to the home I left at 18, now at 19, when I realized I had been living out of my suitcase for over a year. It was November of 22 when time began to slow and I realized that I wanted to return to a life that resembled some sense of stability and routine. I wanted to find myself again. I wanted to reconnect with old friends. I wanted to grow closer to my goals. I wanted to make enough money to allow myself to do all of this. I knew I was asking for a lot. In this same month, I learned that the home I returned to would soon be gone. It was time to pack, but I had no idea what I was doing or where I was going. For 2 months, nearly everything I owned was kept in my car. Suitcase, moving boxes, mementos from the countries I'd visited, hefty binders with scripts I'd written, cameras, stuffed animals. My car closely resembled my state of mind. A mess. While I had the savings to know that I would be okay if I signed a lease, The fear I held on to from working in an industry that was the exact opposite of stability was keeping me in this state where there was no growth. I would spend a week at my now ex-boyfriend's house and the next to my dad's one-bedroom apartment where I slept on the couch. I was constantly with people, which I'm so grateful for, though it gave me minimum time to stop and reflect on what I was doing and what I needed to be working on. I felt myself longing for the period of my life where I was constantly traveling. At least then I had a place to call my own and unpack my things temporarily. At least then it was purposeful. It was in this month when I leaned into all the uncertainties and embraced it.
I'm a Chamberlain. I'm not controlling the gimble's controlling me. So I'm in Amsterdam. The Netherlands is definitely a country I never really even envisioned going to. I'm really glad I did because I've had no idea what was even here, and now I do, and I'm like, oh, okay. I'll have to come back. I think something I definitely didn't expect from Amsterdam is just how many bikes are here. It's definitely like bike central in the city. I don't know about the rest of the Netherlands, but so far here, I've just seen a ton of people on their bikes, which is really cool. There are, of course, like cities in the US where a lot of people ride their bikes, but I don't think it's on this level. I'm not exactly sure the reason. I've heard that part of it is just because the gas is so expensive here, which another thing you see here is a lot more people have electric cars, which is cool. It's very cold here. And not humid at all. I could definitely be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure that the Netherlands isn't really known, or at least Amsterdam isn't really known for like their food. Like, it's not like when you visit Italy, you know, you're like, oh my god, you need to try the food. But I feel kind of comforted in that because I don't really have to worry about going to the best place to eat. Like, I kind of just eat where I want to eat. Like, I'm comfortable with just going to a grocery store, honestly, and just getting, like, a wrap or something, eating that, and then just exploring the rest of the city. I have had food out here, and it has been pretty good, but there's no, like, expectation that's going to be, like, the best thing ever, which I like, because it's kind of just like, okay, we're just going to eat food because we're hungry, and we're just going to enjoy it for what it is. Unlike other countries where everyone's like, oh my god, you need to try this restaurant, it's going to be the best restaurant ever, and you might go there and be like, I don't see what the hype is.
When I returned from Amsterdam, I found myself in the same predicament I was in before. I took a road trip with my boyfriend and his friends, and we drove to Toronto for New Year's. While there were some lovely times spent in Toronto, my life had reached an unhealthy level of chaos. My relationship was dying, my living situation was less than ideal, and there were a few more things that I'm choosing not to get into. Needless to say, I couldn't keep living this way. I couldn't keep all my things in my car, which was leaving my mind a mess. I couldn't hold on to this fear of what could happen if things went wrong. I couldn't sacrifice more alone time. It was on this trip that someone told me, whatever decision you're going to make, you're going to feel some level of regret, because you will never know what is right. At least not in the beginning. What you need to do is make a decision and deal with the regret later. This spoke to me because it was true. Not only in this situation, but in general, in life. I've always been the person who was indecisive. I would overthink every possible scenario, and I would let that suffocate me from ever deciding on anything at all. On January 1st, 2023, I made it back to North Carolina and visited an apartment. I signed the lease the following week. I felt that this was the decision that would give me the most growth, so I made it, and I was right. What I didn't know at the time was that the production I had been relying on for money would soon be cutting heavily back on days. This led to a lot of stress and regret in the moment, but looking back, this only led me to move forward, and I'm so grateful. When I first signed this lease 6 months ago, I was a very different person. I was unsure of myself, and I was incredibly disconnected from myself and my friends. I spent so much time questioning myself and what I wanted, needed, and who I was. Now, while I still have a lot more growing to do, I'm in a much happier and healthier state. So maybe, if you're feeling stuck and having decision anxiety like I was, go for the decision that sounds the scariest, because that will be the decision that forces you to grow.